Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to Accuracy in America. Once again, I am Don Irvine, your host, joined by my wonderfully ensconced co-host, Brian McNicoll.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. And today, I guess we all are kind of chumps anyway, right?
Yeah, it's National Chump Day, that's for sure.
Should be a recognized day. I don't know. Okay, look, I'm not big into all this stop the steal stuff and all these kinds of things, but this is going to be one of the weirdest inaugurations around. I mean, DC, you see all those news reports. And I know I've seen pictures from people who have actually been down there and during the past several days. It does look to me. I put on the list. It's like it does look more like a demilitarized zone, a DMZ, than the DMV
fortress, right?
It's very strange, And I was really surprised this morning because a friend of mine, they used to live here. Their family's from Peru, but the oldest son, one of the things he does is he serves in the Guard. National Guard, and they're all living out in Utah. And lo and behold, I see this picture with some of the backdrop, and I see him in his uniform. I'm like, wait a minute, it's like he's in town.
Yeah,
so,
brought him in from all over.
He got called in to be around there. So it's a very strange situation. I don't want to say I feel too much sympathy for Joe Biden, but here's a day of pomp and circumstance for the new president and vice president. And is going to be severely muted by the fact that crowds are smaller, all this, right, military presence and everything like that, which I think was, I don't know about you, but I think it's overkill.
I think it's a lot of overkill, and I think what caused it is, after what the January 6th thing caused was them to be able to say, the left to be able to say, the right is the source of all the violence and unrest in the country. Never mind that, they've had 5,000 riots, destroyed property, killed people, took whole neighborhoods hostage for weeks on end, and so forth. And the other side, if indeed it was even the other side, and now it looks like it was, people who were too crazy to be really attached to any political reality, has won. But those guys are the threat. The right is the threat, and everything must be done to stop the right. That's all this is just a show of, if you run your mouth, we have all these guys here to stop you, right? So you have all these guys sleeping on the floors of these things, an enormous expense. And, they were showing on TV this morning, the buses all bringing them in. Somebody's got to pay for that too, right? All these guys are fully outfitted. All their equipment's being used, everything. Basically, so that they can have a show of force, so they can say, hey, we're capable of ordering the military around, And then there was Pelosi out, reviewing the troops. I mean, I can only imagine what those people must be thinking, right? They're standing there watching her, and they know that like a week before she was calling them militant domestic terrorists or whatever, and and there she is. Hey, thank you for coming here and rescuing Joe Biden from the angry mob that has not shown any signs of materializing. So
yeah, I mean, what about not just here, but what about across the nation? I mean, there have been all these supposed reports that for state capitals to brace. But I think you and I kind of talked a little bit about this before. That I have not seen anything through my channels of the locals here saying anything was going to happen in Maryland. I don't know if you heard anything about Virginia, but as far as I know, it's pretty all quiet on the Eastern Front.
Right. And there are some people in Virginia who have talked about going to Richmond and protesting, but I think they're walking around carrying signs, which I think still for the meantime we're allowed to do. Not sure entirely when those rules will change, but I'm sure it's coming soon. But, what I mainly see on all the social media that I look at, all the media I look at is people on the right saying to each other, do not go to this stuff. Do not participate. Do not try to hurt anyone. Do not be violent. Right. So I think like the overwhelming, and it was the same case on January 6th, the overwhelming majority, well north of 99% of the people, we're not there to overthrow the government or participate in an insurrection or storm the Capitol or any of that. Right. They came to hear Trump speak. They were hopeful that he had some, pile of evidence he was going to unveil that would change everything. He didn't, most of the people, before they realized the backlash that would come, frankly, left disappointed. Like the comments I saw, it's like, I thought there was, I was hoping he'd have something that changed everything, and he doesn't. So, at that time, I think a lot of people realized that you had to move along. I think in terms of, generating support, I think it kind of worked the other way. People saw that and said, he doesn't have new evidence. We don't have the Kraken. We don't have this lined up, right? And so, they had chances, and there's a lot of evidence out there. And, another thing that we need to look at is we got out-lawyered badly. We got, their Democrats' lawyers beat Republicans' lawyers repeatedly and thoroughly and disastrously. So, we're going to participate in this arena, and it's going to be determined by people people that are not part of the voting process. Then, you better get you some lawyers, right? We were not prepared.
We actually have Spencer watching us. Yay, Spencer.
Up early.
I'm surprised he's awake. Well, yeah, I thought he normally is taking a nap after his Amazon shift.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. I mean, what you're saying here about the lawyers, because that has been one of my pet peeves about all of this too. Is just that, they went and they filed a ton of lawsuits all over the place.
All kinds of people. That's one thing, people kept saying, Rudy's 0 for 60 or 1 for 60 or whatever. Rudy filed 4 lawsuits, right? And all the rest of them were other people seeking other things.
Right. But I think, you're right, though. They did get out-lawyered in the sense that there were just a lot of terrible lawyers that were trying to make the case for the president in the campaign. Part of this may have been this rush that they wanted to get these things in there with a limited time available. But, right. Most judges are going to recognize that, fairly quickly and throw stuff out. And if the Democrats are, were more steeled and prepared for this thing, then that also is going to hurt them. So, if you're going to mount a defense and you're going to do things, put some good lawyers and put some good cases together. And
prepare, right? This doesn't. You can't start election day, right? Yeah. You got to be ready before. They were ready for years. They've been working on this since the last election. The Democrats have, on being ready with lawyers, right? So, what happened is, when the election ended, the American people, we're all for election laws that keep the elections clean. But the enforcement mechanism is the candidates, right? The candidates. Oh, I saw my opponent do X, Y, and Z, and y'all need to investigate that. Okay, they're not going. You can't watch for the law breaking, right? Because there's too much going on that day. There's too many things that you would have to watch, right? So law enforcement's posture toward election laws is show us the violation and we'll come check it out. So we had to be ready to show the violations, and to some extent we did. In Pennsylvania, they had the hearing before the state legislature there. There could still be action on that. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Where people testified to all these things, the probability and the mail-in ballots and the voting counting centers being obscured so the observers couldn't watch it. That's another thing. Everybody who says, oh, there's nothing crooked about this election, you're making it all up. Why didn't you let us watch the count, right? If you were doing everything on the up and up, you should let us watch the count, which they did not do, right? They obstructed it. Where did they obstruct it? In all the key battleground states, right? Where were the counters deceived, kicked out, windows covered? Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee, Atlanta, right? The only 4, by the way, metropolitan areas in the country that did not move heavily more toward Trump than they were in 2016. Isn't that interesting, right? So there's a lot of stuff out there. But the point is, you have to be ready with the legal, you have to be ready to detect this law breaking, report it, prove it, to where the whole American public understands it quickly. And you got to be able to do it fast and precise. And you cannot have, grifters and people coming in with, outlandish claims, spoiling your party. Basically, you have to have a clear message of this. And and Republicans did not accomplish that. They were not ready for this. And, the president, was elected for his management ability in part. Well, this is one aspect of management that they didn't get done.
Yeah, I mean it's that which is too bad for the president in that sense. But I think you're right. The Democrats, I think they were ready to contest an election, and they were ready to go out there and do whatever they could if Biden had actually come up on the short end of the stick. For them
to cheat. They knew that they were going to have to cheat. They were set up for it ahead of time, right? And they were ready to defend it when it became exposed. Anyway.
Yeah, and so to me, it seems that all they had to really do is kind of flip the script and just now defend what had happened there. And I think with election results initially, that it's a lot easier to defend the votes that have already been cast. It's harder. It's much harder to prove that there was a lot of chicanery. I mean, I think that just gives you a much bigger hill to climb. So that already puts the Trump team at a disadvantage. And they, as you said, I mean, they just didn't have a lot of good lawyers on the team through and through, and that wound up costing them big time in the end. But right now, I mean, here in roughly 49 minutes, give or take, the process will start. Joe Biden will be sworn in as the president of the United States, and then Kamala Harris as the vice president. Did you go to the inauguration 4 years ago?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I was down there too. That's the only inauguration I've ever been to in my entire life, and it was quite a trip to see all those people and all of the things that were going on there. It was traditional, typical kind of chilly January day, but it didn't snow or anything like that. I think people were carrying umbrellas that day, though.
Yeah, it was some light mist to parts of it. Yeah. But the thing I remember is I was with my kids, and seeing the rioting and the fights and the cars on fire, and and now when I'm like, oh, we're worried about unrest from the right, I'm like, I didn't hear any concern about this 4 years ago when it was actually happening.
Yeah, and we've seen easily that the unrest, the things that happened on Capitol Hill a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's really kind of a small, fringy group of people that we wouldn't normally associate with. These aren't people that we would be at a cocktail party or at some other event, that type of thing. They were not the typical Trump supporters to do that, because majority, by and large, majority of the 99% of the Trump supporters, or maybe even 99.9% of Trump supporters, they're law-abiding citizens.
They work.
Yeah, we work. and as several of my Republican friends have said, is that we believe in law and order. So that whole display of what happened goes against everything we believe in, to do that. Right. So
we were believing, we took a page from them in participating in protests, right? That's not really a right-wing thing, right? That's not a conservative thing. But, so we go down there and people break off, and, part of it is inexperience. This is not an arena that conservatives are accustomed to competing in. They're not used to going to protests. They're not used to how all that works.
Yeah.
They thought it was, Trump rallies, and Trump rallies are, everybody's gone in an hour and a half. The place is spotless, no trash left behind, try not to disturb the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's true to that extent. So we've talked a lot over the time that we've been doing this show. Mitch McConnell, obviously, for his leadership in the Senate over the years and things like that. But I kind of wonder where we're going with the turtle here after the comments that he said that that Trump provoked the mob. Is this a political thing that he's trying to do?
Yeah, I think he's trying to move past a moment. He said he's not determined how he would vote on impeachment. He's willing to hear. I still see the energy, the air going out of the balloon on that, right? Once he's gone, you think about 2 or 3 weeks from now, Biden will have, they will have signed H.R. 1 and some other horrible legislation, and the EOs that they plan to do today and so forth. The country will have moved on. Is there really going to be a big political thrust to go back and revisit Trump over something that's long over and, not going to get any better from anything you do? Now, there are some people, they're concerned. They think that they can make it where he can never run again. So do we really want that? Do we really want to say, why can't we just vote against him? Do we really want to start canceling the other people's politicians so they cannot run for office? Because that's kind of a slippery slope in itself. And the other thing is, I don't know at the end of the day how many Republicans are going to believe they can afford to participate in this, because like Pat Toomey is done, right? He'll never come back. He'll be primaried. He'll be defeated.
Well, I think he's retiring.
Well, that explains those guys. All the people who Ben Sass, he's in his last term, right? They're going to get those guys, and if a Trump-aligned Republican doesn't take him out, he'll be weakened to the point that a Democrat will, right? There's jihad, holy war of the people who attack Trump in this. And I think that's right. I think, whatever you think of him, he was the leader of your party. He got most of you elected, right? 40% of the people, Republicans in Congress now, weren't there when Trump took office. So he got a lot of people elected. There's a lot of people who owe him. And there's a lot of people who are worried about that 70 or 80 million people who are still listening to what Trump says.
I was going to ask you too. I meant to throw this in here too. So President Trump he and Melania have now, I guess early morning reports that they've left the White House.
Right.
So they're gone.
He gave a speech. He wished Biden luck.
That was a good speech.
Yeah, he thanked people. He took credit where he thought it was due, and we've accomplished a lot. We'll be back in some form, and good luck to Joe. It's a hard job.
This is the thing. I mean, Trump has shown, like speeches like that. He's had a few of these where he has shown that he's quite good. He's very presidential.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it often enough for my taste during the course of his 4 years in office. That I think he missed some opportunities there.
I do too. He's a big Trump supporter. I think he missed some opportunities to go a little less combative and get things done. There was a couple of times when I'm like, I would give a speech that smooths this out, right, rather than attacks the other side. And but he had one mode, and it was hard to operate out of it.
So Trump also joins. I guess they've flown off to Mar-a-Lago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He also joins. It's a handful of presidents who did not attend the inauguration of their successor. And the last one apparently was Andrew Johnson.
Yeah.
This has been a long time. I saw this story about this. I mean, John Adams and then John Quincy Adams, Andrew Johnson. The thing was, apparently he was riding in the carriage, but then he refused to take a second carriage or something like that. So he just decided to boycott the whole thing, and he just left or something.
Right.
He did that, and but Johnson was a kind of a funny character too. I mean, he got it. He had his impeachment, and then he tried
kind of an accidental president anyway.
Yeah, he tried to run. If he rejected by the Republicans, I think he tried to run as a Democrat. I mean, he's just kind of an oddball guy in the end. But you've said before too about this thing about the Senate, and because they only need a simple majority, which they would technically have if they just voted party line and Kamala Harris broke the tie, to bar him from running for office in the future, right? But why don't we leave it up to the voters? I was thinking today about what we had here in Maryland many years ago. We had Bob Ehrlich, was the governor in Maryland. For one term, he lost. He lost his re-election race, and then he came back for a third. He came back to run again, and when he ran for the third time, he did far worse than he did when he ran for the second time.
Right.
And I began to wonder in my mind whether or not this is something that would also be that if Trump was was still allowed to run, if the Congress if the Senate didn't do some stupid thing and bar him, that if he came back 4 years hence, could he still have the same coalition? Could he still be competitive, or would he actually from the 75 million are we looking at at 60 or 65 million or something like that? Could he,
or way less 20
yeah.
could be. I mean, you don't really know. It's hard to tell. I don't know that this arena is where he will come back. I could see him getting control of a media company and, making his opinion known that way rather than actually holding office. I don't know, he advanced through unknowns the first time, right? In 2016, like you didn't know what a Trump presidency would mean and what the left would do. And, could be apparently, what has happened to Trump is he generated a lot of energy on the enemy side, right? He got them fired up.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's unarguable, whatever you say about the election results. The left was inspired by this. So, do we want someone who is going to, you're going to open with the, anger of all those people, the 70 or whatever million who voted for Biden, right? So, I don't know where he is as a political force, as a candidate himself in 2024. Yeah, it's impossible kind of to say.
Right.
I think right now he could sink away. He could say, I enjoy my life post president, and I'll, offer comments when I have something to say, and otherwise enjoy Mar-a-Lago and my beautiful wife. So
right. So Bob has chimed in here. Always enjoy the weekly discussion, guys. I agree with the assessment of lack of effective planning and follow through by the Trump team challenging election results. So we can always count on Bob to support us.
Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Bob. Right. So, I mean, I think you're right about this whole thing about 2024. I kind of like the idea of Trump trying to do something different. So, we've talked, he's been basically deplatformed. Now, the liberals say that he hasn't, because all he had to do is go to the White House press room podium and whatever and do things. He had other ways, but we all know that the most effective communication tool he had was using Twitter and Facebook, right? I mean, that's the media, they hung on every word that he said on through his social media posts. So to me, he was really, by banning him, by suspending him, he was deplatformed. He lost the megaphone that he had used to communicate with everybody. But wouldn't it be something, it would, I don't know, I wonder what the cost, analysis would be to say, rather than do and buy a Newsmax or an OAN or try to create something similar, to create something, like Parler, or take over Parler and make it better, and then find a way to platform that, find a way to, the Parler problem really now is just that, they lose their cloud services with Amazon Web Services, but who wants to take them on?
Well, somebody has said they're going to take them on, and it's a matter of getting it all hooked up.
Well, it's interesting right now because I know Parler was down the list, but I do want to talk about it now, just because. So apparently if you look at the registration for the website, the domain, it's this Epic.
Right.
Right.
Which is in Eastern Washington State.
Things like that. But they're not fully operational. And some of the reports I've seen said that, their plan was never to really host Parler per se. But, we'll have to say it's Oracle is a possibility, but Oracle's a very small bit player in the cloud hosting kind of services thing like that. But, you do have Larry Ellison, who was a Trump supporter, and maybe that's where people move. It was interesting because as I've said many times on the show, I listen to this tech podcast that airs over the weekends, and I usually just listen to it when I'm in the gym, during the week. So I've actually gone through like the 4 hours of their 2-day show, and they had several calls from people who were trying to figure out, and they said they weren't trying to make this show about politics because the show is about tech, but they actually had calls from people who were saying, like, where do I go? I'm trying to find a way to not support Apple, Google, Amazon, and what am I left with? And and the problem is that Apple, Google, and Amazon, through their services, they control so much of the market. It's really hard. So that's where Oracle came in. But then it's hard to piece the other things together. Some guy says, like, I want a phone that's not an iPhone or a Google phone or anything like this. that leaves you with virtually nothing.
Yeah.
Because of the operating systems and things like that. So big tech has gotten huge control over what all of us do. I mean, we have given our privacy to these people in an effort to be able to have access to certain things. But boy, at first, my feelings about Josh Hawley and he had this book, canceled by Simon and Schuster on big tech and things like this. But after all this nonsense with Parler and all these other things, I've been going to think, that Hawley's book, which is now being picked up by Regnery, people need to hear this.
Yeah.
This is a legitimate threat.
And it's like, I put it on Facebook this week, there was a meme on Facebook that said, you can always tell the bad side of any political argument by, look which side the Nazis, support, right? And go the other way, right? And I said, well, sometimes First Amendment people like you and me, the Nazis we don't like their views, but they have the right to say them, right? That's what the First Amendment is. It doesn't protect popular views, don't need protection, right? It's unpopular views. So, sometimes good people have to support, the Nazis' right to say their stuff, however stupid it may be. But the one that I have found that is always associated with the bad guys is censorship, right? The bad guy, it's always the bad guys who want to cut your access to information, right? Good people are proud of what they're doing and they want everybody to know about it. And it's not something they have to protect, right? It's the same thing as, what's going on downtown with all the soldiers, right? A confident republic, a duly elected president ready to take over his term of this strong, vibrant country doesn't need to hide behind all that, right? Trump didn't hide behind all that. And he took it over in far worse shape than it's in now. He's fixed a ton of stuff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's so interesting to see on this First Amendment because there's so many arguments out there. One of the things I think about is just that when conservatives, they want terrible books or things, out of libraries, public libraries, school libraries, or whatever, liberals come in hot and heavy, censorship, all this, they throw all these things at it. We talk about censorship from big tech for our point of view, for what they have done. When you can look at it and you can see the trail of how they have done this. I mean, look, even Jack Dorsey, the head of Twitter, he said he agreed with the decision basically to ban Trump, but he also thought it was a dangerous thing to be doing, right? Yeah. So I mean, here's the CEO of Twitter saying, I agree with it because of some things that Trump said, but on the other hand, this is kind of that maybe dangerous, maybe as you had said earlier, maybe a slippery slope for them. Yeah. But the First Amendment is, it is for the government. The government is not supposed to get in there and take away anybody's right to free speech. So we have this huge argument from the left about, well, these are private companies; they can do whatever they want. I mean, what's the response?
Well, okay, then why are we canceling the Keystone Pipeline? Those are private companies; they're doing what they want, right? So that's situational, right? And right. If you have, what you're having, there's two things that are out there, two cases that are out there. One is an antitrust case, right? Which I think Parler is interested in pursuing. They're like, we can't get this. You make it, there's a service we have to buy, and all the people who sell that service have colluded and not sell it to us. That's restraint of trade, antitrust, restraint of trade. I don't know if they'd win the case, but it would be worth hearing. The other one is, or is Section 230, of the Federal Communications Decency Act, right? Is that viable? What, if Twitter is ordering people off over content and removing content, Twitter's an editor. It's no longer a format, right? It's a newspaper. It's deciding what goes in and doesn't. So if you sued them in that, and their shield is Section 230, would that work, right? Since they're performing as a publisher, not a format, not a forum. So, I don't know. I think that's another one. Like, we need a good lawyer, but I think that case could be one too.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of people are talking about it. Bob has come in with another comment. Could not agree more on the censorship issue. Thankful I have the opportunity to shoot down that nonsense in my classroom of the virtual sort these days.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. I mean, some people are smart enough or sharp enough, they're able to do that, and they don't cow to the PC crowd, to the leftist, nonsense on this. Of course, the lefties, they're all agog. They thought, getting rid of Trump on all these things is fine. I don't know if you saw that Post article that said since Trump, has been silenced, 70, what is it? Talk about election fraud or stealing elections was down like 73%. I didn't read the article, as to who put that together, but I mean, they can probably always say that from a certain point of view anyway.
Right. And people are leaving Twitter, conservatives are marching out en masse. Like I don't know, but I've lost a third of my followers in the last month. And,
and I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it with your friends, but I definitely have seen it with my friends, that, they're shutting down their Facebook accounts, and they'll either just not do it or go somewhere else.
Yeah.
We have someone who's laughing out loud at us, saying that glad to see you guys losing it.
Losing it.
I didn't. If this is losing it, I don't know.
Oh no, man, we lose it. You'll know. It'll be way crazier than this.
Obviously, someone who has not been watching our show very much. I love the comments. I love the comments. Keep them coming. All right. So you just mentioned something about the EOs and the Keystone. So Keystone Pipeline, XL Pipeline, is one of the things that Biden is expected to basically say, he's going to stop it. So this has been the back and forth. Obama didn't like it. Trump, allowed to go forth. Now we're going back. But, to me, one of the things about this, Bob just said, you guys seem pretty tame today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
Sort of a grim day,
Yeah. So, but the thing is that there are jobs. There's lots of jobs here, right, involved in this. The tribes along the way also, they want this thing. Union
Canadians want it. That's the other thing, is like, you starting out on a bad note with Canada. The Trudeau asked Biden to, hey, can we at least have a conversation about this before you do it, right? Which shows that he's in the thrall of these, greeny wackos, and whatever they want, he's going to do without thinking. Biden's one of those guys. He does what the last guy who talked to him said. There's no reflection there. It's like you think about how did he get shoehorned into having to pick a woman of color for vice president? And you may think it's a good idea to have a woman of color, right? But I mean, he was he had lopped off 3/4 of the country before he even started looking at vice presidents. He had a very limited thing, and it was because people said, "Hey, will you support that?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I mean, that's no way to run a country. So they have done this. They can't get the oil out of Canada. They can't get the oil out of the Bakken deposits in the Dakotas. And the problem there is, they could carry it out by train. It's going to get out some way. The product's too profitable, right? And the price of oil is already starting to go back up, and looks to be on a long run toward going way up. Could be a big problem, as usually is under Democrat administrations. But so you can't get the oil out of the north, right? It has to go on trains. So the whole capacity of the train is used up by oil cars, which means everything else that travels out of that part of the country, such as agricultural products, either you pay a premium or you can't get it out at all, right? So farmers really take a hit when you cancel these pipelines. Also, the pipelines are much, much safer than the train, like 3,000 or 4,000 times is safer. It's an unbelievable statistic, right? Because the the oil's just traveling underground. It's checked daily. They put the isotopes through it to see if there's any leakage or whatever. So, it's not an environmental threat. I mean, that's all been worked out, years ago, and everyone, it never would have gotten as far as it did if it was an environmentally sound project. And it's even better for the environment than not doing it. But none of that matters, because, the reason they want to stop Keystone is because Keystone enables fossil fuels to be used, right? And until you have an alternative to fossil fuels, you're going to have to figure out a way to get them to market. But that's our new leaders don't seem to I understand that.
Well, the other thing too about this is just that the guys behind the pipeline, they in an effort to try to appease Biden and the lefties, all the greeny wackos, as you said, it's just that they're willing to spend a lot of money on green initiatives, green things, to try to make this a cleaner, better type of a thing. I mean, we're talking a heck of a lot of money, but which to me tells you that they're just trying to do, as you said, stop the fossil fuel thing. This is not, they couldn't care how safe this is and how green the project might be, how much money would be spent to line the pocket. This is now about, it's like, we're going to stop this thing. This is, we're just, and we don't really care about anything else.
Yeah. Those nice little videos y'all like to put on the internet, that's a lot of electricity, right? That goes into the making and publishing and receiving and reading and watching of those videos. Right, that's a lot of electricity, charging all those phones. All the cars. You want to make all the cars electric. The electricity people are telling you we don't have near enough electricity to power all those cars. But hey, we picked our enemies, and that's who we're going after, and we don't care about science.
Hey, this thought just came to my mind. If these greenies really want to go after some electricity hogs, they should go after the Bitcoin miners. The people who this is one of those funny stories in a sense, because when you mine for Bitcoin, you need a lot of energy. You need a lot of powerful computers that are just churning away forever to mine the Bitcoin. It is the Wall Street Journal. They had this article. I think it was in Germany or someplace. Between the gamer PCs and the Bitcoin PCs, because they generate so much heat, some people have actually been able to heat their homes by transferring the energy from the computers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see it.
Some guy set up some guy had a greenhouse. He was able to, I mean, this is, I remember reading about the early stages of Bitcoin when people were mining them, when people were first doing this, and it just required an enormous amount of energy. Well, so why don't the greenies go? I mean, that's, they could go after people and things like that for sucking up on the grid and doing things that are not environmentally conscious, right? But that's, they have their agenda. They're going to go after certain people, and they love big corporations. On top of that, you can always make a big evil thing out of a corporation. The individuals, much harder to do so, but the corporations, you can lambaste them forever and a day, and it just always works to your advantage.
And the unthinking will lap it up.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say to you too is that you had talked about how Biden kind of listens to the last person who said anything to him, and so my thing would be is that the reason he does that is because he can't remember what
the person before last said.
It's short to remember. Oh, I remember what that guy said. What did the other guy say? Anyway, that's just my little stab at Biden today. So the news had said there were like 17 things he was going to do today. And Keystone Pipeline was one of them. I think the Dreamers is another one. What else is on that list?
Stop the U.S. from withdrawing from the World Health Organization, and he's gonna make Fauci the head of our delegation to the World Health Organization. Rejoin the Paris Accord. Rejoin the Iran deal. He's going to put off the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures till at least the end of March. Pause on student loan payments till the end of September. Let's see what's on here. The 1776 Commission right out the door. We don't want to learn anything about like our actual history. Let's turn right over to Howard Zinn and depart the scene. Non-citizens will be included in the census. The 7 countries Muslim majority where we cannot verify the records of the people trying to get into the country. He's going to undo that. He's going to, stifle ISIS, and a lot of it's immigration related. Open the borders. Don't prosecute within the country. 8-year path to citizenship for people already here. Hawk construction on the border wall.
Yeah, you don't on the immigration thing. You don't have to go back home for 10 years before you can come back here. Those are types of things, right? He's trying to eliminate. Now, what's interesting here is that we have this migrant caravan making its way, right? And
Well, there's an update on that. So it appears, something else that we can thank President Trump for is he got Guatemala and Mexico involved, and people say, "Oh, he didn't ever get them to pay for the border." Yeah, he did, because he got them to guard their border, so the people could not make it to our border, right? And so the Guatemalan army and the Mexican army have managed to disperse most of that caravan.
well, which is great, but apparently, I guess had they made it to the border, apparently the Biden administration was. They were trying to tell them, signaling to them that don't expect that they'll just be able to come right in right away, right? I mean, so it was
I don't know.
That was kind of what they had signaled, and I wonder if that had anything to do with COVID. I mean, what is
right? Supposedly, like Honduras has the worst outbreak in the world right now, and so they're worried about a lot of the people bringing COVID here.
Yeah, to me right now, in some weird way or whatever, is that COVID would give you, would give you a reason potentially to turn people away at the border if they tried to come in caravans or something like this, because where have you been tested? Are they going to set up some kind of testing at the border? And then that just sounds like a huge mess. But you could always say, look, your countries have got spikes. We're dealing with our own issue. You can't come in illegally. We're not going to accept.
Nobody's letting anybody in. I mean, most of the world is in, kind of stay in your own country mode right now.
Right.
But not us. Let's open up and let folks in.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I see this 8-year path to citizenship. It's just, typical Democrat policies of, what they see there is, future voters and everything else down the line and how they can change policy. But a lot of these are Obama era things that he's basically going back to Obama, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was safe, right? Trump was ready to make a deal that would have included a path to citizenship. So when you say there's a repudiation of Trump, that's not really true. And he said that on a number of occasions. In fact, if you go back and you look at the time when Jim Acosta snatched the mic out of the girl's hand, right? What they were talking about there was, Trump was explaining to him that, we need immigrants in this country, and we need to get younger, and we need workers and so forth. And, he was looking to make a big comprehensive immigration deal. That's part of why Ann Coulter turned against him, right? She didn't want any immigration deal at all. So, the reason there hasn't been a big comprehensive immigration thing is not Trump, it's Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, that's interesting to see that. I didn't have this on the list, but I wanted to ask you about this. We've seen some GDP numbers from China about, I think it was like 2% or 2.3% growth or something like this. This once again, and so they're being reported basically as the only country in the world that grew,
right, but they were growing 8 or 9%. So
right. But it has revived the question about how much can we trust any of these figures coming out of China, right?
Right.
Because when I see other things, and you may have seen or read things that Gordon Chang has written, he completely distrusts, and I think rightfully so, the Chinese government and how they do things. And I saw something else today that just said that there's a big disconnect, because while China reports these numbers, their productivity numbers don't really jibe. Right. They're very low for this, and so that doesn't seem to be on the up and up either. But I don't know how we get decent numbers out of China, ones where we can really tell what the heck is going on over there.
Well, I think you can look at like their policy changes to address these things will kind of tell you how alarmed they are.
All right. There's another thing too that came up that I didn't add, that I added internally, but not to you, was Janet Yellen. Mm-hmm. So the Senate has started their their confirmation hearings, and so when I was reading about her, it was interesting because she really, she's really kind of of the person who doesn't like big deficits and debt and all these kinds of things. But here she's coming in as a Treasury Secretary with $21.6 trillion on the national debt, which I've said many times, over the last few years, I was like, this is a big problem for me, but the Republicans, no one has really paid much attention to it. But it's now representing, based on the way the current state of the economy, it's 100.1% of our economy. And the predictions are that if things don't improve, that by 2050, it could be 200%. That's not where we want to go. But here's Yellen. She's kind of in a tough situation where she almost has to kind of walk back her previous history and her beliefs to take on, because she's basically, hey, I support this $1.9 trillion spending program for COVID relief. This kind of doesn't fit with how she had talked about monetary policy and budgets and everything like that in the past.
Right, and she will have to change like how she is and how she relates to this administration, right? I think they made the assumption that since she had a falling out with President Trump, that she would she would be a good fit for Biden. Anybody that hates Trump should work good with Biden. I don't know that she hates Trump, and I don't know that the Biden people are going to find that she's the ally that they think she is. So she's a deficit hawk, and she always has been. And so that was part of what got her upset at Trump, was he was willing to open the purse strings to get other political things accomplished, and foregoing a lot of taxes, right, on corporations and individuals. So he was definitely driving it in a certain direction. Now you're going to have a president who's less averse to taxes. In fact, has promised on a campaign trail to raise taxes. It'll be interesting to see how far he gets with that, with those precarious majorities that the Democrats have, and what will be hard to defend in 2022 unless they steal the elections again. But you have he's in a box with her. That's a kind of a bad deal. And if he fires her too quickly, that signals like a full-on leftist economic policy coming, which that would be bad for him and the markets, right? So she kind of has some leverage over him at this point.
Yeah, and I think for all those taxes that Biden has proposed, it in an economy like we have right now, as it's trying to recover, I think that's not an issue that anyone really wants to take up legislatively this year. Then the problem is that do you go ahead and attack it in 2022 when you have an election for the Senate and for the House coming up? How many people want to be saddled with that type of thing like that? So I think his tax deals it's going to be a little bit tricky, and as you said, with Yellen in there too, this is going to be a lot harder really than I initially thought it was going to be. Once I started to see the playing field, I said, it's not going to be quite the slam dunk the Democrats think it's going to be.
Right.
Along that basis, one of the things that Biden wants to do too is raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour. Yeah. And then comes in the wonderful Ro Khanna from California, and he's like, no, he says it's got to go to $23. It's like,
hey, let's make it $400.
Right.
Little's good. Lots got to be better, right? What is the argument against that? Why shouldn't it be $400 an hour?
Yeah, I mean,
all the arguments against $400 an hour attain to $7.25 an hour, right? It's all the same argument, and the fact is not going to change. If you don't think you make enough money, you need to go find another job, right? That's never going to change. Fixing minimum wage is not going to help that. What it will do is promote a lot of automation in the industries that now hire minimum wage workers. You have to ask, who are these people, right? More than half of them are less than 20 years old, which means they're not family breadwinners, right? And I think like 6% or 4% or something of the people who actually earn minimum wage are family breadwinners, right? Most people, it's a second job, or it's students, or it's people that don't have a lot to offer employers. Like a lot of you need to come here and learn how to work, how to show up on time every day and do what the boss says, and think creatively when you're not sure what the boss would want. And, there's a lot that goes into having a job. And, we have a thing set up where people can get jobs with no experience and so forth. But if you double the minimum wage, more than double the minimum wage, people are going to look for other options. So the companies that run these businesses that hire all the minimum wage people, McDonald's and so forth, they're prepared to do it without people, right? In most cases, they're moving toward automation anyway.
Right. McDonald's, you go into a lot of McDonald's, you see kiosks,
Yeah.
They want to try to get you to do that versus using the counter when you can. So they've already, they've been moving in that direction. What these liberals, they keep pushing this idea, and they, Ro Khanna thinks that at $23, productivity will improve because, that'll help people a lot.
Well, no. What he's saying is that matches the productivity gains since the last time the minimum wage was raised. Okay. That doesn't, you can say wages should go up with productivity. Most people would agree with that, but, that's an isolated, thing. You're comparing something moving to something that sits still. It's not, that comparison doesn't really work. It doesn't matter what the wrong federal policy was before, as opposed to what the wrong federal policy should be today.
Yeah. To me, when I look at the minimum wage, besides the fact that, I just thought it was basically the entry wage, the training wage. That's what encourages employers to take risks on hiring these inexperienced teenagers and whatnot. Right. But, the other thing too, is just that, so you raise $7.25 to $15 an hour. That's not going to, tell you you're going to get a worker who's twice as good in the end.
That's right. Yeah. And the other thing is you're taking over an economy where, we had, before the pandemic, we had 1.5 million more jobs than we had job seekers. We had record low unemployment for women, Latinas, Blacks, minority youth overall, and rising wages. So the biggest increase in wages, 2.5 times the rate of inflation at the lowest end of the scale. So what they're trying to do, if you want to accomplish it, it looks like the thing to do would be to continue what President Trump was doing, because he was well on the way to addressing this without raising the minimum wage.
All right. Final topic, his pardons and commutations. Any thoughts?
Do what? Say that again?
The pardons and the commutations.
Oh, yeah. His list is no worse than anybody else's list. Who was that? Lil Wayne, the rapper?
Wayne, yeah.
Bannon.
It was a minor gun possession charge or something, I think.
Yeah. Right? Kwame Kilpatrick, former mayor of Detroit.
That one surprised me, actually. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. How did that come up to him, I wonder? And what? Yeah, I haven't read into it. Like, what is the basis of that? Was he some kind of model prisoner?
Yeah.
Is there a reason that, he would reach out and help the Democrat, very hostile to his agenda, former mayor of Detroit? I don't know. But it ended up being 70 something people.
73 pardons and 70 commutations, I think is how it worked out.
So, it's something that all presidents do now. It's kind of a tradition. And, you look at the collection of people that get these things, they're not they have some scratches, or they wouldn't be in their situation, right? So he did what he did. Yeah, and I think the media kept focusing on whether he was going to pardon himself and his kids, and I'm like, for what? What crime do you think you're going to convict him of? So
Bob is our faithful commenter here.
Yeah.
That is the type of, back to our last talk here, about our last subject, that is the type of much needed fact-based economic argument on the implications of raising the minimum wage the left hates. Well done.
Right.
We got a real fan.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. And the big attention on the pardons and everything like that was Steve Bannon. A lightning rod of a guy. I saw on Facebook a friend of mine, diehard conservative Republican in California, was very upset about former Congressman Cunningham's thing. But I think everybody's going to have different reactions to this. There's a long list of people, and they get vetted somehow, and then voila, it's done. And
right. Most of it comes out of this system where they're vetting them, and they're it's people that other people have noticed are sitting in prison but deserve another look.
Yeah. And most of the time, you kind of forget about who these people are until maybe the next set of pardons, and you say, well, what did the last president do? Okay, but I usually don't think too much of these pardons after they're done. They kind of slip from my memory. I got other things to worry about than who the president has pardoned or commuted the sentence on at this point. All right, 2 minutes.
The Lincoln Project, John Weaver, who's a campaign aide to John Kasich and John McCain, therefore barely a Republican ever in his life, has been caught. People who were trying to get jobs with them and so forth. He was saying you can get a job if you have to men, saying, if you have sexual relations with me, I can improve your employee your employment hopes, right? That's a kind of a scummy group of people that ended up running that thing, right? Rick Wilson, there's 4 or 5 of them are way behind on their taxes. Rick Wilson is a avowed racist. Weaver is using it to proposition guys. That's real fine, moral, upstanding folks you got there, buddy. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're not paragons of virtue by any stretch of the imagination. And to play on that, I guess, is I'm glad the Mets did what they did by firing this Jared Porter, their GM, who they had just hired over this. But he'd done this whole thing came up when he was with the Cubs years ago, right?
Right. Why wasn't that caught in the vet?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why? And everything like this. But so they did that. I'm not going to mention all the sordid details about that, but anyway, and then
that's one of those things, though. Just real quickly on that.
Yeah.
You ask out a girl, she says no. You move on, right? There are it's about 3.5 billion women on the planet. Okay, that one said no. Go on to another one, right? There's a long way to go until you run out of them. But to just keep on pestering some woman, but because she won't go out with you, basically. That's unconscionable. People don't realize what strain he put on this woman who did nothing, right? Made a choice she has a right to make and did nothing to him. And
right.
So,
was it something like more than 60 messages or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, leave her alone.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. It's not going to happen for you. Do you want to date with somebody who comes out on the 57th message and says, okay, all right, I'll do it. Right? Really? You want to go out with her? Because I don't think it's going to work out like you think.
Really? Exactly what you're expecting.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally, I want to just rest in peace to Don Sutton, Hall of Fame pitcher.
Yeah. And broadcaster.
Yeah. Just another great baseball player from my youth. I guess your youth too. We're pretty close in age. So, yeah.
The best trades in Astros history was we had Don Sutton. We traded him to the Brewers for Billy Duran and Kevin Bass, who were mainstays on the Astros for a decade.
So good guy. He was only 75, so he died on the young side.
Young.
In those days. All right. Well, everybody, thank you once again for joining us today and being with us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Hopefully, you're getting in line somewhere up on for the vaccine schedule as you're improving, and. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week. Same time, same channel.